Welcome back to the Trade Hacker Mindset podcast. In this episode, I want to talk to you about the difference between trading scared and focusing on risk.
Trading the markets can be difficult to master and seemingly just out of reach. Professional traders have a secret. Trading requires total mental and emotional control. It requires the Trade Hacker Mindset.
All right, so let's jump into this discussion. By the way, I am in my car driving. So if the audio quality isn't quite what it normally is, I apologize, but hopefully the message is worth it. I'm going to start recording some of these on my commute to the office. I have a condo that I use for my trading office, and it's about 20 minutes away from my house. And so hopefully I'll start putting out some more kind of 20-minute episodes here. I've slacked a little bit on getting out new episodes for the Trade Hacker Mindset podcast, so hopefully I can get back into a groove here and start sharing some thoughts that hopefully are helpful to you all. So let's jump into this discussion of trading scared versus focusing on risk. So I put out a video kind of recapping 2024, looking forward to 2025. And one of the main things that I mentioned was the idea of really dialing in and being hyper-focused on defining and managing risk. Now, I've been trading for a long time, since 1999, and I talk a lot about managing risk, focusing on risk. But I feel like last year I kind of got away from that. Like, not that I was trading reckless by any means, but I certainly wasn't hyper focused on risk. I was definitely more focused on the profit side than I was on the risk side. You know, one example of that was I did a challenge portfolio, and it was a very aggressive allocation, meaning a higher amount of capital going towards it than really should have been. Now I knew that, and it started out really well. The P&L really started ramping up, and then it fell apart. And obviously when you're using a lot of leverage and it falls apart, it can happen quickly. So that was one example. But another example was, I would just, at the end of each day, as I'm kind of loading up my trades, logging my trades, reviewing all my trades, I'd have days where I was like, oh, lost 10 grand today. Oh, lost 6 grand today. And of course I'd have the days where I'd make at least that much as well. But it was too much of a it was too much of a back and forth of the amount I was making versus the amount I was losing. And when that happens mentally, it's pretty taxing, right? Because you feel like you're on a hamster wheel. Like you're never really getting the traction that you want to have those exponential returns and that exponential growth in your account that we want with trading options. And so over the holidays, as I was kind of planning out what I wanted to focus on in 2025, it really came down to, I realized, just resetting and refocusing on managing risk. And so what I did is I went through all my different strategies, and the strategies that I'm trading for 2025 aren't really a lot different necessarily than what I was trading before, but the position size and the mentality around taking a loss is more hyper focused. So I went through all my different strategies, and I have a defined written plan of, okay, here is the exact amount I'm willing to lose on a trade. And it's different between strategy, right? If I'm day trading Tesla using puts and calls, I have one amount that I'm okay with losing if it really goes against me. Whereas if I'm trading a 0 DTE iron Condor, I have another set of risk parameters. So every strategy is a little bit different. But what that's doing is, and at the time of this recording, it's January 17th. So we're a couple weeks into the year 2025. And so far, I really feel the difference. And I'm trying to figure out what that feeling was. And really what it comes down to is it's helping me feel more in control. Like at the end of the day, a lot of times last year, I would come to the end of the day, I'm like, I was doing a lot more day trading. So I was kind of mentally worn out at the end of the day. And if I had a sizable losing day, it was really draining. And it was really having an effect, I realized, on my mental capacity and my decision-making ability. Whereas if I'm hyper-focused on managing risk and I have that defined amount in mind so that every single time, and this is how it always should be. And this is definitely how I've done it in the past, and I just kind of got away from it. But every time I put on a trade now, I am thinking about, if this trade goes against me, here's how much I'm going to lose. Am I okay with that? And I think that it's critically important to do every time you place a trade. I mentioned in my year-end video that I scaled down my account size. So I really have 4 main accounts that I trade, and I pulled money out of them to give myself a lower amount of capital than what I'm used to trading, which will help me in turn focus on that managing of risk. And then at some point throughout the year, maybe I put more money back in, or maybe I just, only increase size based on profits. I haven't quite decided that yet, but either way, it's going to be if I do put more money in, it's going to be a reward for continuing to focus on risk in a very detailed, hyper-focused way. So that's kind of what I'm doing so far. And the first couple of weeks of 2025 have been awesome. Like, not only from a P&L standpoint, but also from a standpoint of how I feel at the end of the day. I'm not mentally drained. I don't want to just check out when I go home with my family. I have more energy. A lot of there's so many more things that it benefits from a mental standpoint when you really are hyper focused on managing risk or hyper focused on risk. And like I've always said, you focus on the risk and the profits will follow. And that's exactly what's going on. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, there's a fine line between focusing on risk and trading scared. Because trading out of fear, having fearful thoughts when you're placing trades, that's bad, right? That's a negative. That will hold you back as a trader, no doubt. In Mark Douglas's book, Trading in the Zone, one of his quotes was I'm paraphrasing here, but it's something like, I don't think I could say this any more clear. The best traders in the world are not afraid, right? So trading out of fear, can really hold you back, whether it's, fear of losses, fear of missing out, fear of making a mistake, all different levels of fears. So what I'm doing, when I'm saying I'm defining and focusing on an amount of risk, that's very different than trading out of fear. So I want to make sure that there's a definite line between what those are, because that is a completely different set of trading mentality. You don't want to trade out of fear, but you do want to focus on risk. And sometimes it can be a very fine line, right? Because if you're hyper focused on risk, then some people will automatically create a fearful mindset when they're taking the trades. Hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, so that is just a kind of a quick update on what's going on, and something that I thought that might be helpful if you're having problems the other part real quick. The other thing was what I got, I in retrospect, looking back and observing kind of how I felt a lot of times, just call it last year. I hate to blanket my whole mental state as 2024, but just over the last year, it feels like I kind of got too used to losing. Now, and there's another fine line there that I think is really critical, and that is, as traders, we have to accept losses. But we also don't want to get to the point where we're okay with just taking losses and we get lackadaisical and reckless and start taking losses and be like, oh, well, I'll just make it up, next day. And I kind of feel like that is a little bit of what happened last year. I got so used to having big losses that I almost got numb to it and almost kind of ignored the feeling that you really want to avoid that, right? And so I know that probably sounds weird to a lot of you, but I got to that point where I was taking big losses and of course I was having big win days as well. And so it was like that would kind of make up for it. But the reality is that's not the kind of roller coaster of P&L that you want, right? I mean, you want more consistent, more steady, and that's going to be better on your mental framework over the long run. So anyway, that's what I'm focusing on. My point is, if you ever get to the point where you feel like you're just not getting any traction, try what I'm doing. Go through every single thing that you trade. Have a very predefined risk level, which most of you probably already do. I kind of thought that I did, but I dialed it in even more just to be focused. And I've gone back to something that I did a couple years ago that a mental coach had me do for a while, and that is on my Apple Watch, every 30 minutes, I have a timer that goes off. So it just buzzes my wrist. And it's just a reminder to check in with myself mentally to see where I am overall from, what kind of risk exposure do I have on at that time, to am I following my rules? Am I continuing to make sure that, my risk parameters are dialed in on every single trade? And so that every single time I take a trade, I'm reminding myself, I'm putting this trade on. If here's the max I'm willing to lose, am I okay with that? And just continuing to check in with that. It's work, right? It is something that you do have to focus on. It doesn't come easy. I think we all want that easy button where we don't have to think about it. We can just place trades, use our bots, let them run. And at the end of the day, our computer turns into an ATM machine. But the reality is, trading is not that easy. If it was, everybody would be a multi-gazillionaire, right? And so the ones that have the discipline and the focus and the level of desire and risk management and all the things that we talk about, those are the ones that are going to be successful, because everybody cannot be successful trading. It just doesn't work that way. So anyway, hope that helps. Just pulled up to the office. Hope everybody has a good day, and we'll talk to you next time. Cheers.